the city exhales at night. It breathes out a long, slow mist of exhaust and regret that settles in the streets, clinging to the asphalt under the artificial glare of neon and sodium lamps. I drive through that exhalation every night. My car, a nondescript sedan that smells perpetually of stale air freshener and lukewarm coffee, is my bubble. My mobile office. My cage. Driving for a rideshare app isn't a career, it's a state of being. You become a ghost, a transient figure gliding through the lives of others for 10 to 15 minutes at a time. You learn the city's secret rhythms, the lonely pulse that beats after midnight. You think you've seen it all, but you haven't. My rideshare app has a glitch. It started 3 weeks ago. Every night, or rather, every morning, sometime around 3 a.m., I get a trip request from a passenger named Null. The pickup is always somewhere abandoned. The destination is always my apartment building. But the terrifying part isn't that no one ever gets in the car. It's that the app has started saying Null is already here with me. The first time it happened, I almost dismissed it. The phone chimed with its familiar, insistent tone, cutting through the low hum of a late-night talk radio show. A new ride. I glanced at the screen. The name read Null. A strange name, but I'd seen stranger. People used all sorts of aliases. The pickup was an address in the old industrial sector, a part of the city that had been left to rust and decay. The factories were skeletal remains, their windows like vacant eyes staring out at nothing. I accepted the ride. The money was the money, and late-night fares and dead zones often came with a decent surge bonus. I drove through the empty streets, the only signs of life being the traffic lights that cycled from green to yellow to red for no one but me. The GPS led me down a pockmarked service road, ending at a chain-link fence topped with barbed wire. Beyond it stood the colossal derelict shape of a former canning plant. The pickup pin was dropped right at the padlocked main gate. I pulled over, engine idling, and tapped the screen to notify my rider that I had arrived. And then I waited. The minutes ticked by. The radio host's voice droned on about some local political scandal. 5 minutes. 10. This wasn't unusual. Sometimes riders had trouble finding the car, or they were finishing a cigarette. I sent a message through the app, a pre-written text just saying I was at the gate in a gray sedan. No reply. After the official wait time had expired, I prepared to cancel the ride, ready to collect my small fee for the trouble and move on. But the cancel button was grayed out. I couldn't press it. I tried restarting the app, then my phone. Nothing worked. The trip was locked in. I was stuck. Annoyance was curdling into a knot of unease in my stomach. Then just as I was about to call support, the app screen changed. The trip status updated to en route. The destination popped up, my own address. A cold wave washed over me. This had to be a prank. A very elaborate, very stupid prank. I looked around, scanning the darkness for a hidden camera, or some kids laughing from behind a crumbling brick wall. There was nothing, just silence and the low hum of my car. The app was now showing a direct route to my apartment, the little blue car icon moving along the digital street. It was as if the passenger, Null, had gotten into the car without me ever seeing them. I sat there for another minute, heart thumping against my ribs. Finally, I decided to just drive. Maybe if I completed the route, the app would reset itself. The drive home was the strangest I'd ever taken. I kept glancing into the rearview mirror, my eyes trying to convince my brain that the backseat was truly empty. It was. The silence in the car felt different, though. Heavier, pressurized. When I pulled up to my building, the app chimed again. The trip was complete. The fare was calculated, €. No tip. But there was a rating, 5 perfect stars. From Null. I forced a laugh, but the sound was thin and brittle in the confines of the car. A bug. A serious, system-wide bug. That had to be it. I shut off the app, went inside and tried to forget the entire bizarre experience. But the next night it happened again. The second time, the ping from Null came at 3:17 a.m. The pickup location was different. A long abandoned pier that jutted out into the polluted black water of the city's shipping canal. I felt a sense of dread when I saw the name, but a morbid curiosity pushed me to accept. I had to know what this was. I told myself I was gathering evidence, something to show the support team. The pier was even more desolate than the factory. The wooden planks were rotting, and a thick, briny fog rolled in off the water, swallowing the weak light from the distant street lamps. I followed the same procedure. I arrived, I waited, I sent a message that went unanswered. Again, the cancel button was useless. And again, after 10 minutes of tense silence, the trip began on its own, charting a course back to my apartment. This time I was hyper-aware of every sensation. The creak of the suspension, the whisper of the tires on the damp road, the faint flicker of the dashboard lights. The backseat was empty. I knew it was empty, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. When the trip ended in front of my building, another 0.00 fare, another 5-star rating, I noticed something new. A smell. It was faint, barely there, but unmistakable. It was the scent of cold, damp air, like a cellar that hadn't been opened in a century. It had a strange metallic tang to it, like ozone after a lightning strike. I sniffed the air, leaning over into the back. The scent was strongest on the passenger side seat. It was a smell that didn't belong in my car. It made the hairs on my arms stand up. I spent an hour that morning shampooing the upholstery and blasting the interior with the strongest air freshener I could find, but the memory of that cold, damp smell lingered in my mind. This was the first true escalation, the point where I could no longer dismiss it as a simple software bug. This was something else. The Null trips became a nightly ritual, a dreaded appointment I felt compelled to keep. Each night, a new forgotten place. The back lot of a derelict shopping mall, its storefronts boarded up like closed caskets. A disused commuter rail station, tracks swallowed by weeds. A forgotten cemetery on the edge of town, the pickup pin dropped right in the center of the oldest, most weathered tombstones. Each time, the same sequence. The wait, the automatic start, the silent, unnerving drive to my own front door. And each time, the cold, damp smell in the back seat grew stronger. It was no longer faint. It was a presence, an olfactory ghost that clung to the fabric of the seats long after the trip was over. I started buying industrial-strength odor eliminators, the kind used at crime scenes. They only masked the smell for a few hours. By the next night, it would be back, waiting for me. I descended into obsession. I tried everything to break the cycle. I tried logging off before 3 a.m., but the app would freeze, becoming unresponsive until the Null request came through. I tried declining the ride, but the decline button simply wouldn't register my touch. I was a prisoner of the app, of this phantom passenger. My contact attempts with the rideshare company were a Kafkaesque nightmare. I spent hours on hold, only to be connected to cheerful but utterly useless support agents who followed a script. They told me to reinstall the app. They told me to clear my cache. They told me they had no record of any trips from a user named Null. My earnings history told a different story. It was a long, scrolling list of 0.00 fares, a testament to my nightly unpaid service. I felt like I was losing my mind. Sleep became a battleground of anxiety. I'd jolt awake in a cold sweat, thinking I heard the app's chime even when my phone was off. During the day, I was a zombie, haunted by the anticipation of the coming night. I started driving to the pickup locations early, parking a block away and watching, hoping to catch a glimpse of whoever was making these requests. I saw nothing. No cars, no people. Just the urban decay and the oppressive silence of a city asleep. Then came the second escalation, the glitches. It started with the radio. During a Null trip from the skeletal remains of a drive-in movie theater, the radio, which had been off, suddenly blasted to life. It wasn't music. It was static, a harsh shredding sound that filled the car. I tried to turn it off, but the knob wouldn't work. The touchscreen was frozen. It was just this deafening wall of white noise. But as I listened, my blood running cold, I realized it wasn't just random static. Buried deep within the noise, almost too low to perceive, was something else. A rhythmic distortion, a cadence. It sounded like a voice, whispering just below the threshold of understanding. A dry, rasping sound like dead leaves skittering across pavement. At the same time, the GPS on my phone began to flicker. The clean blue line of the route home twisted and corrupted, turning a sickly, pixelated red. The map itself seemed to warp, the street names dissolving into illegible symbols. The interior lights of the car pulsed in time with the static, plunging me into darkness for a split second before flaring back to life. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The smell was overpowering now, the damp, earthy scent mixed with the smell of burning electronics. It felt like the car itself was being possessed, its systems hijacked by whatever Null was. I was no longer just a driver, I was the pilot of a haunted vessel. The moment the trip ended, the static cut out. The radio went silent. The GPS returned to normal. The lights steadied. The car was mine again. But the silence that followed was worse than the noise. It was heavy, expectant. I sat in front of my building for a long time, the engine off, just breathing. I took my car to 2 different mechanics. They ran full diagnostics. They found nothing. Absolutely nothing wrong with the electrical systems. This was a false calm, a desperate attempt at rationalization. I told myself it was a power surge, a freak coincidence, but I knew it wasn't. The Null trips had evolved. They were no longer passive. They were actively encroaching on my reality, corrupting the technology I relied on. The line between a software glitch and a malevolent presence had been crossed. The final escalation was the one that broke me. The pickup location was a place from my own past, the parking lot of my old high school. It was a place I hadn't been to in over a decade, a place filled with ghosts of a different sort. Driving there, I felt a profound sense of violation. This was no longer random. It felt targeted, personal. I waited in the dark lot, the empty school looming like a mausoleum. The trip started as it always did. The silent drive began. The static returned to the radio, the whispering voice within it seeming closer this time, almost coherent. I tried to ignore it. I focused on the road, on the familiar path back to my apartment. I told myself it was just one more ride, one more night, and then I would throw my phone in the river and never drive again. I glanced up at the rearview mirror, a nervous habit I'd developed on these trips, and I saw it. It wasn't a person, not a face. It was a distortion. For a single heart-stopping second, the reflection showed an indentation in the center of the backseat, a depression in the cushion, exactly as if a person of considerable weight were sitting there. The light from a passing street lamp seemed to bend around a form I couldn't see, a subtle warping of space. I blinked and it was gone. The seat was flat, empty, smooth. But the feeling remained. It was a physical sensation, a crushing pressure in the cabin, making my ears pop. A profound, unnatural cold that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was a predator's cold. The cold of the deep ocean. The cold of an open grave. I felt observed, scrutinized, as if I were a specimen under a microscope. Every move I made, every breath I took was being recorded by an invisible passenger. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. I almost swerved into oncoming traffic. I had to pull over, my car lurching to a stop on the shoulder of the road. I sat there gasping for air, my heart hammering like it was trying to break out of my chest. I stared at the back seat, half expecting to see something manifest out of the shadows. There was nothing but the oppressive emptiness and that god-awful smell of damp earth and decay. This was it. The final thread of my sanity had snapped. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't my imagination. It was real. Null was real. And it had been in my car, night after night. I had been its chauffeur. I drove home in a daze, the rest of the trip a blur of terror. I stumbled into my apartment and resolved with every fiber of my being that this was the end. I would delete the app. I would sell the car. I would move out of the city. It was over. I just had to get through one more night. Tonight, I made the promise to myself. I would not open the app. I would let 3 a.m. come and go. I would break the cycle. I sat in my darkened living room, my phone on the coffee table, screen down. I watched the clock on the cable box tick past 2:59. Then 3:01. Silence. No chime. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost made me dizzy, washed over me. I had done it. It was over. Then my phone lit up. It didn't chime. It just illuminated the room with its cold white light. I picked it up with a trembling hand. A single notification was on the screen. It wasn't a ride request. It was a status update from the app. It read, "Your rider is here." My blood turned to ice. The passenger name was Null. The trip had already started. There was no pickup location listed because it didn't need one. I looked at the little map on the screen. The passenger icon, the little stylized person, wasn't at some distant point. It was pulsing softly inside the blue circle that represented my car. My car, which was parked 2 floors below me in the building's garage. The app was telling me that Null was already in the back seat. My breath hitched in my throat. I slowly walked to the window, pulling back the curtain just enough to peer down into the dimly lit street. My car was there, unmoving. It looked normal, but I knew it wasn't. Against all reason, against every instinct for self-preservation screaming at me to run, I went downstairs. I don't know why. Maybe I had to see for myself. Maybe I had to confront it. I walked into the cold concrete garage, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the silence. I approached my car. It looked empty. I peered through the driver's side window. The back seat was vacant. There was no smell, no sound. Just a car. Maybe the app was wrong. Maybe it was the final desperate gasp of a dying glitch. I unlocked the door and got in. The moment I shut the door behind me, a heavy, metallic thunk echoed through the car as every single door locked simultaneously. I lunged for the handle, but it was useless. I was sealed in. I looked at my phone, which was still glowing in my hand. The screen changed. The destination was no longer my address. It was a string of corrupted alien characters, a location that didn't exist on any map I had ever seen. The engine roared to life on its own. The headlights cut through the darkness of the garage. The steering wheel turned, guided by an unseen hand. The car began to move. It crawled out of my parking spot, navigated the tight turns of the garage, and emerged onto the deserted city street. It accelerated smoothly, driving with a purpose I couldn't comprehend. I was no longer the driver. I was a prisoner, a passenger in my own car. I risked one last glance in the rearview mirror. I still couldn't see anything, but I could feel it. The weight, the pressure, the absolute certainty of a presence in the seat behind me. Cold, silent, and eternal. I don't know where this ride ends. I'm not the driver anymore. I'm just cargo. The app is still open on my phone. The trip details have updated one last time. The destination remains a corrupted mystery, but the estimated fare is no longer 0. It's been replaced by a single spinning infinity symbol. As the city lights blur into streaks of color and the world I know fades behind me, I wonder about the other glitches in the system. Join me next time for the story of the live streamer who found a viewer that wasn't human.